Hello and welcome to Sum and Difference of Cubes. This is basically a factoring technique that will help you to break down 64x cubed minus 125 into factored form. So it's not really anything that is going to take a lot of figuring out and guessing and checking like you did in other factoring techniques. It's basically just following the formula. So rather than teach the formula to you, I always usually tell my students that I think of this as a recipe. So if you remember the process of this as far as how to factor it is with the recipe that I normally tell my students, then hopefully it makes it a little bit easier for you to get to your answer rather than just a typical way where teachers just tell you memorize the formula, plug in the numbers, and you're good to go. So my way is a little bit different. So if you like it, use it. If you don't like it, just go with the formula way and plug in numbers, and it'll work fine too. Okay. So the first thing I tell my students is break everything up, numbers and letters, into triples, where everybody has a power of 3 attached to it. So one of these three things, right? Because you have three things: 64, you have x to the third, you have 125. So out of these three things, the x is already broken up as a triple, so there's nothing to be changed for him. Okay. But as far as 64 and 125 are concerned, these guys are not broken up as triples. These guys are currently powers of 1, right? 64 to the power of 1, 125 to the power of 1. So these are definitely not triples. Okay, so just ask yourself a question. What is 64 the result of as far as what number when multiplied to itself makes 64? And same thing goes for 125. What number when multiplied to itself 3 times makes 125? And when you figure out those answers, either through memorization or just doing I guess, multiplication on the side in your paper, then you can find out that the numbers that make 64 are 4 times 4 times 4. And the numbers that make 125 is 5 times 5 times 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write everybody as triples. So 4 to the third, oops, why isn't it writing? I'm in pen mode. Okay, 4 to the third, x to the third, minus 5 to the third. Okay, so everything's broken up into triples. All right. So next thing is the two triples in the front. You want to make them written as a single triple rather than two separate triples. Okay. So when I mean single tripwise, I mean combine the 4 and the x together, and then put a common power of 3 around them basically. So 4x in parentheses to the power of 3, and then minus 5 to the third. Okay, and you understand why I did that, because when I tell my students the next couple of steps, it's gonna sound like it's a recipe where I talk about pots and I talk about cleaning things and I tell about using soap. So hopefully it doesn't get too confusing and you can follow along, even if the story doesn't seem to like have anything to do with math. Okay, so here goes. So I call 4x and I call 5. I call them my ingredients because that's what I'm gonna put in the pots when I start to make my dish. Okay, so like in any kitchen, if you want to make a dish, you need some pots. So we need a small pot that can fit 2 ingredients, yeah? And we need a bigger pot that can fit a lot more. So this is my bigger pot, this is my smaller pot, okay? And the smaller pot will fit 1 of each ingredient. And the bigger pot will fit 2 of each ingredient. Okay, so what were my ingredients again? 4x and 5. Okay, don't think of the 5 as negative 5. Just think of it as 4x and 5. Those are my ingredients. So if we follow our recipe, it says put 1 of each ingredient. So I'll put a 4x and I'll put a 5 in my smaller pot. Okay, in the bigger pot, I'm going to put 2 of each ingredient. So I'll put 2 4x's and I'll put 2 5's. Okay, and in the middle, I'm gonna mix the 2 ingredients together. Yeah, I'm gonna mix 4x, I'm gonna mix 5 together. I'm gonna mix them together through multiplication. And what do we get when we mix 4x and 5 together with multiplication? 20x. Okay, so I've now put in the ingredients into my small pot and my big pot, and I'm gonna wait for it to cook. Yeah, and like any kitchen, you don't just want to stand there and sit and watch the thing cook, right? I mean, yeah, you're gonna want to stir it and stuff like that, but you're not going to do that the whole time, right? You want to be productive, so you want to wash your dishes, okay? And whenever you wash dishes, it's always good to use something called soap, okay? So we're going to use soap to wash the dishes. And luckily for us, soap is actually an acronym that's going to help us put signs, yeah, like plus signs and minus signs in between all my ingredients, right? Because notice how they're all blank, right? There's no sign here, there's no sign here, and there's no sign there in between all my ingredients. So soap is going to tell us what signs to put in those blanks, okay? So the word soap is an acronym. S stands for same. O stands for opposite. And AP stands for always positive. Okay, and this acronym tells us what signs go in the three blanks. Okay, so this first letter S stands for same, and it's going to tell me how to put the sign in that first blank. Okay, so same means same sign as your original problem. So my original problem had a minus sign, so my first blank gets a minus sign also. Okay, the O stands for opposite. Yeah, so the second blank is going to be opposite. So this blank right here is going to have opposite. Okay, so opposite of the very first sign that I put into these spots, these spaces. So the very first sign I put into this space was a negative. And what's the opposite of him? Positive. Okay. And in the very last blank, I'm going to use the last two letters of this acronym called SOAP, and that means always positive. So I'm going to put a positive in that last spot. So how did I relate this to the story again? Well, like I said, right, we're cooking. Yeah, and as we wait for these ingredients to cook, yeah, in the pots that we put them in, we clean stuff up, we clean the dishes, we clean the pans with soap. Yeah, and that soap acronym tells us what signs to put in each of these three blanks. Okay, so I think the ingredients are starting to mix together, so we can start to make them into their dish so that we can serve it to our customer. Okay, so let's clean things up and let's see what we got. So first parentheses stays the same. It just stays 4x minus 5. Second parentheses, we can start combining things. So we go 4x, 4x, multiply that out, we get 16x squared. Then plus 20x. Then we can multiply the 5 and the 5 together and we get 25. And guess what? We're all done. Wasn't that easy? Well, I hope it was. Yeah. So if you want to use this story to help you remember how to get this process called sum and difference of cubes, go for it. Feel free. Yeah. I'll be happy if you guys use this story in the future. Okay, good luck. Bye-bye.